The Maha Kumbh Mela gathers over 400 million people, making it the largest human gathering on earth. And I had the chance to experience this once-in-a-lifetime event, but what I found left me questioning everything. But before we get there, we have to truly understand what makes the Kumbh Mela so special. But the only problem is I don't know anything about the event. So I came up with a 3-step plan. Step 1 is to research everything I can about the event. Step 2 is to actually go to the Mela and experience it for myself. The third step is to give you guys my thoughts on the event. But before we do any of that, we have to get to India first. Just so you guys know, I am Indian, but I was born in the US, and this is going to be my first time in India in over 12 years, so I have no idea what to expect. But filming on a plane feels weird, so let's skip ahead. We finally made it to Prayagraj, India. I hope I said it right. I don't know how to say it, but we finally made it, and this is the home of the Kumbh Mela. And my voice is like kind of, shaky because my nose has been running all day, probably because of all the smoke, and it's a little cold. I know, I was a little shocked too. So there's only one thing we can do, start the research, and the best place to do that is Google. The Kumbh Mela is a Hindu festival that takes place every 6 and 12 years, but the one we're heading to is a Maha Kumbh Mela, and it takes place once every 144 years. It is the largest pilgrimage of the world, where millions of people come to bathe in the Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati River to wash away their sins and attain liberation. According to ancient Hindu texts, the gods and demons work together to churn the cosmic ocean to gain the nectar of immortality, or Amrit. But when the Amrit was released from the ocean, there was a war that broke out between the gods and demons for the nectar. And during this war, 4 drops of Amrit fell down and landed on earth in 4 spots: Prayagraj, Haridwar, Ujjain, and Nashik. And it is believed that during the Kumbh Mela, if people bathe in the sacred rivers, they will attain liberation and wash away their sins. This year, the Maha Kumbh Mela is located in Prayagraj, India, and it just so happens to fall on the special date of a rare planetary alignment between Jupiter, the Sun, and the Moon. Now, what's interesting to me is that the ancient Hindu texts were able to predict this planetary alignment thousands of years ago without any telescope, which makes me wonder what else they knew. But another significant fact about the Mela is it brings together people from all areas of life, including the rich, the poor, the sadhus, which are pretty much just monks and priests, and then there's everyday people like you and me. And it's also not just limited to Indians, because there will be people from all around the world there. The only bad part is I'm an introvert, which means I don't really like being in crowded places. But there's going to be over 100 million people at this event. And my brain can't even process how many people that is, so it might get a little crazy. Okay, that's enough research for today. It's time for us to go to the Mela and experience it for ourselves. The good news is I have VIP access, so I'm going to show you guys the behind the scenes stuff that the majority of public does not get to see. First, I want to show you guys where everyone will live. The majority of people are actually sleeping in tents near the river, but we actually got the special opportunity to sleep in this cottage with a restaurant right outside. The only bad part is we didn't get to experience the restaurant because we arrived at 1 a.m. because of the crazy traffic, and then we had to wake up early the next day to go to the Mela. The next day, we got the chance to travel in a private car that took us right to the banks of the Ganga River. But we had to get out and walk for over an hour because cars weren't allowed after a certain point. The majority of public would actually bathe right on the banks of the Ganga River, but we got the opportunity to go to the exact spot where the Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati River meet, and the only way to get there was to go on a boat. Now, everything wasn't all positive at this spiritual event, because people were actually getting frustrated with the amount of waiting, so they began shoving, pushing, and yelling at other people. And this wasn't just limited to younger people, because I've witnessed older people push little kids out the way just so they could get to the river faster. On top of that, there was a lot of homeless people of all ages there. But what's ironic to me was that the people who came here searching for liberation were the same people acting disrespectful towards the homeless. I was expecting compassion and peace, but what I didn't expect was that this pilgrimage would turn into a fight for survival. And I was able to see the real character of people when we were getting on the boat. You see, to get on the boat, you need VIP access and permission from the authorities. But everyone wanted to get on without either of those. So every time a boat would come to the dock, people would rush to the edge without caring who was in front of them just to get on the boat. And because of how many people there were, the dock would slowly start going under the water. People came here for spiritual enlightenment, but here at the docks, it wasn't faith guiding their actions, it was desperation. And when a police officer got pushed into the water, I had to ask, how far are people willing to go for salvation? Now, after waiting for 2 hours, the boat finally started to move towards Triveni Sangam, which is the name of the spot where the 3 rivers meet. Now, a few minutes later, something unexpected happened. The same people who were yelling and shoving to get on the boat, now all of a sudden were quiet, silent, and were beginning to act like monks. I was left standing there so confused, asking what changed, because they haven't even gotten into the sacred river yet. And after that dramatic shift, we finally got to Triveni Sangam, and the place was very well decorated, and surprisingly the water was pretty clean. Now it was time for me to finally get into the river, but right before I did, I was thinking, If this water could wash away all sins, does that include murder? Obviously, I'm not going to commit murder, but I was just asking. In the moment my feet touched the water, a shock went through my body because it was freezing. And as I stood in the water, completely surrounded by people laughing, praying, and having fun, something shifted. I completely forgot about all the waiting, the walking, and the violent behavior that people had just done, and was completely in the present moment. This, more than anything, felt like the heart of the Mela and was by far the best part of this experience. And after leaving the river, I was still left without too much information other than what I found on Google. So I decided to ask other people, including the staff, police officers, and people both older and younger, what else they knew about the event. Surprisingly, the majority of people didn't really understand what was going on and gave me the same answers that I found on Google. And when I asked more in-depth questions like, what happens when we go in the water? And why does the water wash away our sins? They couldn't really give me a clear answer. But when I asked them my next question, the look on their face showed a lot of guilt and a lot of confusion. What about all the sins that people had just done to get into the river? Nobody was able to give me an answer to that question, and it left me wondering, if we truly don't understand why we follow a tradition, can we really connect with this deeper meaning? Now I want to note that I only talked to around 40 to 50 people, so there's a lot of people that I didn't meet. But what I find interesting is that the people who came to the Mela did so because they heard about it from someone else, and they told them about the benefits they could get from taking a dip in the river. For many, the Mela wasn't about reflection. Instead, it was just a sacred act done without knowing why, which meant that after it was done, nothing changed and people went back to acting like their normal selves. This raises an important concern. How many people are blindly following traditions without understanding the meaning behind them? For many of the people that I talked to, they said they heard about it from their parents, who heard about it from their parents, and in this passing down of information, how much of it is actually lost or changed? Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't follow tradition, but what I am saying is we should start asking why. Because if we don't know why, how can we truly connect with our own religion? For me, I'm a religious person, and I believe in God, but I don't have blind faith, and I believe we have the ability to question, think, and reflect, and we need to use those abilities to actually understand our history and the world around us. Overall, I believe this was truly an amazing experience. Despite the many ups and downs I had on the journey, I was still able to learn a lot about my culture, the country, the people, and myself. And in the end, I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity to go. I came here searching for answers, but instead I was left with contradictions, chaos, and moments of peace. And maybe faith isn't about having all the answers, it's about daring to ask the right questions. So tell me in the comments, are traditions meant to be followed without questioning, or does questioning them make them stronger? Let's start a conversation, and more importantly, let's start asking why. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and if you like this video, you're gonna love this one, so click here to watch.